Namaste. Happy Easter, happy awakening, happy spring, whatever you're celebrating today. This morning we celebrated Jeff's Agnihotra here at True Freedom. It was the bringer of the light, bringing the light in at the dawn. Really is what Easter is about. We are all awakening or celebrating the miracle of that resurrection in each of us. So let's just begin with our hands in Anjali Mudra. Find ourselves a nice spot there in your home temples. I have a towel with me today. You might want something as we get down on our backs. I'll use maybe the towel, or you may have a bolster, or if not, anything is fine too. We'll do a little bit of heart openers as we're on our back. So today as we move, we'll move a little bit of a flow, and then we'll have some periods where we'll rest and drop back into a little bit of softness or silence. So let's go ahead and begin finding our sit bones fully into the earth or onto our cushion or mat. Give us our time that we need to come and settle onto the mat, to our tapas, to our practice. So we begin with our hands in Anjali Mudra, palms together in front of our heart. Just noticing how we're showing up on the mat today. Maybe we can soften our gaze or close our eyes. However you bring yourself to this moment of now. Many of us have different ways of doing that. You might want to have a little bit of water or tissue or something on hand. Let's begin with 5 omkaras or ohms. We can begin to chant the bija om, signifies the essence of the ultimate reality, which is, Jeff also talked today about, we move outward into the prakriti, and then we vacillate between the prakriti and then back to the purusha, back to the silence. So in our practice today, we'll bring ourselves to that heat. We'll practice moving outward into creation, into our asanas, into our body, and then we'll drop back into a little bit of the silence. By practicing that way, by giving ourselves an understanding of that guideline, it helps us across all of our spirituality to understand what that spanda or that pulsation is. And so we can begin in our Anjali Mudra with our ohms, helping us to remember the essence of the truth of our reality. And so we'll start with an exhale. Begin with a nice long exhale. Pausing here in the silence. Allowing for the inspiration to arise for our practice today. As we're all collectively feeling the challenge of the magnitude of the new normal moving across the planet. each embody our own capacity of awakening, the divine potential in ourselves and others. May the miracle of Easter bring us perfect peace. When you're ready, you can open your eyes, come back to the room. So, again, as Jeff spoke of this morning, what we're doing is we're actually waking up in a world that we're being asked to die to. We're being asked to understand what's real and what's not real. One of my favorite is from George Carlin. He said, "Did you ever have a vuja day?" We can start to move as I talk, just to get a little bit of movement. He said, not deja vu, it's vuja day. He said, did you ever have that strange feeling that something big just happened, that never happened before, and nothing feels familiar? It's kind of what we're experiencing, kind of the reverse of a deja vu, where we're being put into that openness, to that place of no soft place to land. And like Jeff had mentioned, purposefully by the divine. We can bring our hands to the top of our thighs. So what it's doing is shaking us loose of all of those attachments, dropping our chin to our chest, bowing to self, looking up towards the ceiling and letting our heart draw forward. So we begin that dance, the dance of pulsation into the Shiva, into that Purusha, the silence, the potential, the pure potential, and then outward into creation and the Prakriti, to the Shakti. So, like in the ocean, the wave begins to come to the surface and become distinct. And it starts to believe that it's a wave. All of the pieces of itself are separate until it falls back into the ocean and realizes that it is the ocean. So finishing again back in neutral, lifting through the crown of the head. Go ahead and just bring your shoulders up towards your ears and just release them down again. Let them go with a nice ha. Inhaling, lifting those shoulders. All of our shoulds that we have about ourselves today, let them go with a ha. Just release it out. Inhaling, lift. Exhaling, release. Just a few more times here. Just as if when the truth becomes to be less obvious for us, our hearts begin to yearn, to cry out for that truth. So we go to the knowledge. We go to the ancients who cognized the truth and brought it forward. Two of our great, you can do a little neck circles here. Two of our great Vedic texts are the Bhagavad Gita and the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So they become our guiding, our belief system, which guides us on how to be true, or how to live as true human beings. So we're being called to that in our quarantines, in our families, in our relationships now, under the tapas. And just move our head in different directions, all the way around in a circle, releasing out any tension in the head and the neck. So as we bring ourselves to that heat on our mat, there's two principles in these guiding texts that help us in this time of great friction. The two which are effort and surrender. We'll go ahead and bring that right hand down to the outside of the thigh, lift up through, or the floor, lift up through that left arm, reach it all the way across, bring it all the way to that opposite knee, and just hold there for a moment, let the chin fall down to the chest. And so we have abhyasa, which is effort, and vairagya, which is surrender. They seemingly seem opposing or different. We can lift that arm up, bring it out to the opposite side, and then take it over to the left side. It's how we set ourselves into action, but we are not the result of that action. It's simply for the sake of acting, moving universally. Go ahead and release that arm down to the outside of the thigh, and then bring yourself back up towards center. So most of my practices, I like to begin low and slow. So we'll come down on our backs. Bring yourself to a nice, comfortable position on your back. You can rest with your head on a mat or a towel, or you can rest however it feels comfortable for you. It helps me when I first come down to my mat to bend my knees slightly, so it gives a little bit of allowance for my lower back to kind of release out. I'm going to come back to a seated position, but you can remain on your back. Just letting yourself fall into the mat, feeling the release of the grounding of the earth energy, the decharging of the earth through our bones. Our bodies are made of the earth element, all the elements. So we can decharge through that earth element back to the earth. Maybe again begin with your eyes soft or your gaze low. So we begin the march inward. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, we begin with the gross, that which is the biggest, and then we draw all the way to the subtle, to that very fine point of our connection to creation, which some people call that the higher power. In recovery, we call it higher power. We call it the source, God, Allah, many names for that. The idea is to, really the answer to the human condition is to find this higher self, receiving the formless while still in the form, or perceiving the formless. So beginning our breath is a great place for us to start. It becomes our anchor for our practice as we move. We begin where we are. We become from that progression of the physical through the mental, emotional, spiritual. In the last limb of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, we move into samadhi. But go ahead if you can and draw your arms up towards the wall behind with your feet flat onto the mat, or you can lengthen your legs long, whichever you prefer. Pause here for a moment. Feel the length between the hip and the rib cage on either side. As you inhale, go ahead and let those arms come all the way up towards the ceiling. Pause there in kind of a sleepwalking position. You can, as if you're screwing a jar lid on, let your little baby finger come towards the center a little bit, so we outer rotate that upper arm. We can feel that head of the arm bone kind of fall back into the socket. So we're lying on our back. I'm sitting, just so I can see. And then you bring those arms down towards the hips on the exhale. Lift up on the inhale, take it all the way back towards the wall behind, and pause with your arms on the floor, pausing there for a moment to breathe. So one of my favorite quotes here is that which is to give light must withstand the burning. That's Viktor Frankl. Bringing our feet flat onto the mat as we lie down on our back. We can inhale full and deep. Your arms can come back to your side or remain towards the wall behind, whichever you feel more comfortable with. As you inhale, you can draw as you inhale full and deep and exhale those knees out towards the left side. Let both your knees fall down towards the left side and pause there for a moment. So we have both the aroused part of ourself and then we have the relaxed part of ourself. We can inhale back towards center and then exhale back towards the opposite side. So in yoga, we regulate all the systems through our movement, our breath, our focus. Take us through the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual. Just continuing that same motion as your knees come to center on the inhale. And then exhale, fall to the opposite side. Developing into your own pattern of your own breath and your own movement. Memories and sensations surface and then they resolve. So we're exploring these sensations without judgment. Finishing with those knees back towards center, Go ahead and draw your knees in towards your chest, rounding out into that mid-back, letting your nose come towards your knees, and just round out, feel the heat draw into the belly, that individual place of will, and then release your head back down. Again, exhaling, knees or nose to the knee, building the heat in the core, feeling the action of the belly, contract, and then release back down. Just a few more of those, following your own breath. Releasing back. And then when you're ready, you can bring your feet back flat onto the mat. Go ahead and lift your legs all the way towards the ceiling. Bend those knees again. Drop your feet back to the mat. And then knees bent. Extend. Bend. Toes touch the mat. You can start to feel the bracing in the core as those toes drop. Almost like you're dipping your toes in the ocean. You can take them a little bit farther towards the end of your mat. Feel the muscles that are bracing at the core. Continue to lift and extend those legs, bend the knees, release those feet back down to the mat. Just a few more times. We'll finish with those legs towards the ceiling. Go ahead and extend the legs apart from each other. You have a nice stretch in the inner thighs. Go ahead and flexing the feet. Maybe a little bit of an ankle circle, either way with those feet. Waking up the toes, thanking your feet for bringing you to your practice today. We forget about our feet. And then when you're ready, draw those legs back towards center. Bend those knees again. Feet back flat onto the mat as you lift your hips away from the mat. You can feel that bridge position, drawing your heels towards your shoulder blades as you lengthen through the top of the thigh. You can drop your hips just half of an inch and feel the inner rotation of your thighs as you lengthen. Bringing it back flat onto the mat. Go ahead and just extend that right leg out. Draw that left knee in towards your chest. Pause here for a moment. You can draw that left knee just slightly out to the side, and then to the left side, and then back across midline. Take it a little bit farther across midline, just as we did earlier with both of our knees. Going slow. So the left shoulder can remain as much as possible onto the mat. You have a nice twist in the lower half of the body. And then release that left leg long. Take it out to the opposite side. So the right knee comes in. So in our practice today, we're practicing our becoming aware of where our focus lies. Focusing on the movements of the body, focusing on the breath. The movements of the mind. Maybe there's a certain emotion that's present today with us. Without needing to fix or change anything, we're simply being present with what is. So we'll bring both feet back flat onto the mat. With our left foot on top of our right knee, we're going to lift our right foot away from the mat. Get a nice stretch in the left outer hip. You can flex both feet if you like. Maybe this is okay for you, or you'd like to lift your nose towards your foot, and then you can find that action in the core again, that rounding of the mid-back. Releasing our head back flat again. You can lengthen that lower leg towards the ceiling, flex both feet again, draw the nose to the knee. The sun's coming out. I feel like the sun's peeking in the window. And then release back down again. So you can let go of both of those legs, kind of shake it out, and then bring that left foot flat onto the mat. The right foot lifts up in kind of a number 4. As you lift that left foot away from the mat, you can feel the action in the right outer hip. Maybe both feet flex. You get that little temper tantrum going on in the limbs as you release in the belly of the muscle. So you can lengthen that left leg towards the ceiling. Find that outer release in the right hip. And then when you're ready, bring it on back, both feet flat onto the mat. Finishing with those knee sways again, just gently left and right. We're releasing out any tension in that lower back. Many of us are in different routines. Some of us are sitting more than normal. I think I am. And so being gentle with that lower back when we begin our practice. Finishing with those knees over to the right side. Let's go ahead and lift that right foot on top of that left knee. And again, lengthen through that left side body. Finding that release. We can also begin to feel in the lung meridian on that left side, directing our breath into that left rib cage, feeling the expansion through the intercostal muscles, down into the lower lungs, the alveoli. And then bringing it back to center when we're ready. Eventually finding our way back to the left side with both knees. We'll take that left foot and lift it up to the outside of that right knee. Maybe that right arm extends towards the wall behind. You feel a nice twist in the lower half of the spine. Again, directing that breath into the right rib cage. Remembering that energy follows focus. Where focus goes, energy follows. So becoming aware of where our thoughts are, what we're thinking about. Gently nudging it back to what's at hand. Finishing back with our feet back flat onto the mat. Go ahead and bring your hands behind your head. Just lift your head just slightly away from the mat. Hold on to the rib cage tucking towards the hip bones and feel that action. Go ahead and release your head back flat onto the mat. And at your own exhale, come back up again. Again, you can feel the heat in the belly. You feel that rib cage tucking and then release. Go ahead and one more time lift. Rib cage to the hip bones and then release. Now we can bring our knees back towards the chest. You might want to bring your palms of your hands flat onto the mat and then bring the knuckles kind of underneath your back of your hips. So you kind of got your hips on your hands. I don't know if you can see that. Now with our hips lifted towards, or with our legs lifted towards the ceiling, we can draw our legs towards the front of the mat and then lift our hip bones towards our rib cage. Now we have the opposite. We're coming up with the hip bones and creating that heat in the belly in the lower half of the belly. Feeling that action of contraction, release. That same spanda, that same moving out and then taking it back to rest. And then finishing back with our feet back flat onto the mat. And lengthening both legs long towards the end of the mat. We'll bring our arms towards the wall behind. This is great for freeing up the diaphragm, opening up that space at the base of the rib cage. You can lengthen that left leg long and the left arm. So we have just the left side extending out. And then lengthen that right heel and the little baby finger on the right arm reaching in the opposite direction. Pausing here for a moment and feel the breath right into the belly. Actually, you can bring your hands onto the belly. You can take a moment here and just feel the first part of the 3-part breath. So with your hands on the belly, you can feel as you inhale the breath dropping down, coming to the base of the spine. Our breath keeps us in our bodies as we move. Yoga mitigates that fight or flight. If you're feeling a bit depressive in your day or low energy, you can focus that inhale a little bit more than the exhale, that inspiration, to energize that collapsed spirit sometimes we have in our day. As you move into the second part of that 3-part breath, you can bring the fingers of your hands to the front of the rib cage and then your thumbs towards the sides. Now you can feel that balloon effect, or the lungs expand laterally as you inhale. Maybe the belly opens and then the rib cage expands out. It may be the first time today you felt a breath so full and deep. You start to toggle between that expanding out and then resting back to center. Beautiful. I can see it happening in each one of your bodies. So then when you're ready, you can, if it feels okay, go ahead and move up to the upper chest. Bring one hand to that place right by the clavicle, or the, what is it called? What, those bones right there?
Collarbone?
Yeah, collarbone. So now on that third part of the breath, you can feel the belly rise, rib cage expand, and then all the way up into the upper chest, back palate of the throat opens up. So it's our tools to master our own physiology. It's the breath. It self-regulates us. Finishing and marrying all 3 segments together into one long breath. Feeling that breath all the way at the top of the apex, through the crown of the head. And then all the way back towards the feet, or the belly. Some people call this next one the Durga breath. As you inhale, you can feel that breath full and deep, and pause. Just catch that breath. Pause for a moment. Let the energy build. Almost as if you're coming out of deep water and just ready for that next breath. Go ahead and exhale out when the energy builds. Pausing at the very bottom of the breath. Just catching that breath for a moment. On the exhale, we can release out any anxiety or any holding. We can quell that agitation, and then breathe back into a more natural breath when you're ready. So let's go ahead and just turn to our left side or our right side. Pause there for a moment. All the transitions, the movement between our asanas are important places for us to carry the equanimity along, to stay focused. Eventually we'll find our way to an all-fours position on the mat. Take your time to get there. So we'll begin with our hands directly underneath our shoulders, fingers wide, gripping into the mat. You can feel that the heels of the hands slightly have less pressure with the fingers gripping or pressing. Go ahead and just drop back into that child's pose for a moment and breathe here. Round out into that mid-back. You can sway side to side and begin to feel the side bodies kind of open a little bit too. Just remembering that nothing is static in yoga. Even when we're not moving, we're moving. Bringing it on back up towards center. Walking our fingers slightly forward of our shoulders and coming into that modified plank or plank. You can come to your knees. Dropping back into that child's pose and then moving forward into that plank or modified plank. You can feel the elbows come in towards your side bodies as you activate into the back of the upper arm. Noticing your thoughts, noticing your breath. Just continuing here in this little bit of a vinyasa or flow to start to feel that cadence of matching movement with breath. Brings that meditative quality to our practice. When you're ready, you can come all the way flat down onto the mat. Just gently bringing yourself to the elbows directly underneath your shoulders in the Sphinx position. Draw the elbows down towards our hips and kind of army crawl forward a little bit. There's not much movement on the mat, but we might be feeling that extension in the lower half of the spine. Go ahead and let your feet lift up towards the ceiling and look towards your navel. Let your belly lift away from the mat in this With that right hip tip, go ahead and drop it down towards the mat. Just the right hip tip, the front of the hip. And then lift back up again. Drop that left hip tip down. Lift back up. And drop the right. It takes a little bit of focus and control. Those muscles that are close to the bone there. Bringing it back to center. Releasing your belly back down onto the mat. And then just let those feet toggle side to side. So you can just let the ankles and the feet go right and left. Gives a nice twist in the lower half of the spine. So we can bring our hands where our elbows were. Come into a little baby cobra here. Pressing down into the front of our hips. Go ahead and lift up through the front of the rib cage. Just to the rib cage if you can. We'll just do a little baby cobra. So we'll feel that place right at the diaphragm at the base of the rib cage and breathe into that space. Feel that you can lift your hands away from the mat and draw them behind you if you like. So everything is in the middle of the upper back. And we're pressing down into the tops of the feet and tops of the thighs, rooting to rise. Bringing our hands back flat onto the mat. Let our head drop and come back up into that all fours, back into a child's pose. Pausing there for a moment to breathe. So now we have just another portion of our vinyasa as we come up in the inhale. Bring it back down to the belly, up into that little baby cobra, back into the child's pose. Continuing on your own at your own pace in this flow. Opens up the spinal fluid in the areas that run on either side of the spine, bathing the brain in that cerebrospinal fluid. Opens up the capacities for focus and clarity. Just continuing at your own pace, noticing and feeling, focusing and letting go. Just a few more times here. It's all about bringing the heat so we can learn how to withstand, how to manage it in our life, in our day, in our practice. Yoga is our life. Life is our yoga. So finishing with your belly flat onto the mat and your head just resting on your hands or on the mat, right on your third eye. Or to the side if it feels more comfortable. And just taking a moment here, letting yourself surrender in the front body, feeling the weight of the body onto the mat. Resting the shoulders, releasing. So here we find that Purusha, the silence. Drop into the non-doing. Finishing with that right arm all the way forward onto the floor. We bring the left hand directly underneath the shoulder. With that left leg lifting towards the ceiling, we can push through the left hand and roll onto our right side. Now we can bring that left foot to the outside of the mat or somewhere onto the floor. And open that left arm towards the ceiling. It sounds confusing, but it's really just a roll to the right side. Now we have that little baby back bend, opening into the heart space, releasing out any tension or holding in our hearts, in our quarantines, in our families, in our relationships. It's that love that we're asking for, we're begging for, the right action as we move in our world through all this heat. Eventually we'll find our way back to our belly. Take your time getting there. And then when you're ready, you can bring that left hand out towards the front of the mat. And then the right hand comes directly underneath the shoulder. With that right leg lifted, you can bend into that right knee and roll over onto that left side. Now that right foot comes onto the floor somewhere behind you. and that right arm lifts. So you have a nice opening in the front body, a nice contraction into the mid-back, and a nice big heart opening. So we can consider our last few days, or maybe even this morning or today. Consider how we've opened and closed, how we've come to that contraction, those spaces, and I know we all have. I will speak for myself. Bringing it back to center when you're ready. Let's go ahead and lift up into all fours again. Drop back into that child's pose. Pause here for a moment and breathe. You can rest your head onto the mat. You can bring your hands behind you if you like and rest here. So giving ourselves time to consider the last few days. Consider those times or those spaces where it got hard and we had to close down a little bit. Tara Brach calls that the reactive trance. We also can consider those times when the beauty of our hearts and the beauties of other hearts have shown. We have the loving, caring, creating, wisdom, remembering, the reopening. So when you're ready, you can come back to that all fours position. I'm just going to do a little bit of lateral flexion here. We can look over our right shoulder, look and maybe swing our tail over to the right. You can feel that contraction between the hip and the rib cage on the right side. There's less space there. And then take it to the opposite side. So wag your tail left and right. Feel that action. In our practice today, we're bearing witness to all of it. There is no light without the dark, and there's no dark without the light. It's all part and parcel of this creation. Good. Bring it on back to center when you're ready. Let's do a little bit of cat-cow here, but let's begin on one end or the other. Let's say we'll begin with our tailbone. Just let that tailbone lift up towards the ceiling. I call it turkey feathers. Just let those, we'll call it chicken feathers for Easter. Let those chicken feathers fly. And then let that tailbone tuck under. So your hips are rounded, and then release the belly down towards the mat. Let that tailbone lift. Just a few of these right there at the end of the spine. And then as we drop the tailbone, you can feel it articulate through each spinal column, all the way up through the mid-back, chin tucks down to the chest, right through the crown of the head. And then let the tailbone unfurl first, tailbone release, and then articulate all the way through the spine, all the way to the crown. And then that tailbone drops, and then it goes all the way through the spinal column. You can experiment with starting your movement from the other end. It could be your head that drops, and then everything follows from there. Sometimes when we go along the spine, we don't miss spaces. If we just go in the middle, we might miss something. Again, this is regulating the nervous system. It's decompressing all of those contractions, or decharging all of the contractions, all of the cliches, all of the samsaras, the pain and the suffering that we see, that we come in contact with, that becomes stuck in our nervous system. When you're ready, bring it on back to a child's pose. We'll walk both of our hands out towards the right side of the mat and lengthen through that left arm. Feel that reach through the left side body. You can kind of shake the hips down a little bit and feel that release a little bit deeper. And then when you're ready, you can take it back towards the opposite side. Take it all the way over to the right, or to the left side, lengthening through that right arm, reaching through that side body. Bringing it back to center when you're ready. One more time, let's come up to an all fours position. This time we're going to tuck those toes under and come up into a down dog. Could be our first down dog of the day. So go easy on yourself. Take some time bending one knee or the other, walking that dog out. I read somewhere, I hadn't heard this, but grief can hang out in our hamstrings. A lot of times we're tight in the back of our legs, and that's a lot of holding of the grief, the sadness, the pain. So go ahead and bend and extend. Take a moment to really release that out. Bring it back down towards our knees. And let's do a little gate pose here. Let's bring our left hand flat onto the mat and bring our right leg out towards the end of our mat, reaching our right arm towards the ceiling. So now we have that pushing down and the left hand opening the heart again, reaching through that right arm, extending that right leg towards the end of the mat. You can always take it a little bit farther. You can bring that right leg behind you slightly as well. Come into a wild thing here. And then release that arm back down. You can kind of thread it underneath the left arm, drop that shoulder onto the mat, and just get a nice release into the top of the shoulder. A little twist in the upper body. Noticing where your thoughts lie, how your breath moves, where your emotions become present. And then when you're ready, bring it back to all four. We'll drop back into that child's pose just for a moment. Reset the back of our hips a little bit. Kind of rotate a little bit left and right. And then when you're ready, come back to that all fours. Everybody doing okay? Good. We'll bring that right arm into the center. Turn out towards our left side with that left leg long. Reaching that left arm towards the ceiling. You can bring the left arm towards your ear. We didn't do that on the other side, but you can. And then you can play with it a little bit in your own body. Explore the edges for yourself. Take my words, but make them yours. And then when you're ready, bring it on back to an all fours position. Drop back into that child's pose one more time. Come into a wide leg child's pose. I'm just gonna, you can, if you have a bolster, you can lay your belly on the bolster for a moment. We're just gonna pause here just for a second. You can feel the third eye maybe onto the mat, or the breath in your back body into the back lungs. So we're all in a global reflection. We're all in that reactive awareness. So times of great friction are also times of great awakening. We ask ourselves here in our child's pose, what helps us to remember? What helps us to remember to live from that awake heart? Remembering what you focus on grows. So it's a mindful kind of presence, turning towards the goodness, gladdening of the mind. So it takes courage to connect to this open, to this vulnerability, more present and tender. Beautiful. So when you're ready, you can come back to that all fours position. We're going to tuck those toes under, come back into that down dog. Come up into a nice big extension. Go all the way to the tops of those toes if you can, way up to the toe box, and then drop back down to those heels. Take it up to the toe box, bend those knees deeply, and then in or rotate those thighs, push back through the hamstrings, and then unbend the knees and take it back a little bit deeper. Go ahead and come one more time back up to the tops of those toes. Bend your knees deeply. Look towards the front of your mat, and you can jump or walk forward, whichever you prefer. Come up into a forward bend. Hands on the mat or on your shins or on your thighs. Go ahead and come up halfway into a box pose, and then Release the belly to the tops of the thighs again, and then roll up one vertebrae at a time. Come all the way to standing. So we're going to bring ourselves up to a full extension, lifting our arms up towards the ceiling. Pause here. Reach, reach, reach with your fingers. Let your shoulders come out of the socket a little bit. And then drop those shoulders down just like we did as we were sitting. So it's a nice reach and then a ha. Let the top of the arm bones settle into the shoulder socket. Reach and then ha. So one more time, big extension. This time we're going to swan dive forward. Come forward into a forward bend. Come halfway up. So if you looked at yourself in your camera, you might want to bring a soft bend to those knees. So you want to be kind of a 90-degree between the hip and the leg. Sometimes that takes a little softness behind the knees. Give yourself a nice big inhale here. You can feel the breath open into that rib cage. And then when you're ready, exhale like a gate swinging in the wind, I like to say. And then back up to that inhale, halfway, and then exhale. You can hear that breath into your own ears. Really feel that sigh, that release. Inhale, and then when you're ready, roll up one vertebrae at a time, coming all the way to standing. Let's keep the movement going in the breath. We'll go ahead and reach those hands towards the ceiling. Swan dive forward. Inhale halfway up. Go ahead and release the head forward. Hang, and then roll up one vertebrae at a time. So give yourself a moment in this little flow. Inhale, lift. Arms reach towards the ceiling. Swan dive forward. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, belly to the tops of the thighs. Roll up one vertebrae at a time. Last time. Inhaling. Focus and let go. Exhaling. Swan dive forward. Inhale, halfway up. Exhale, release. And then roll up one vertebrae at a time. Good. Let's just shake everything out. I'll turn towards the front of the mat here. So we're bringing the brave presence to our practice. We're open into that vulnerability, that space in us that is afraid at times or has a hard time referencing ourselves to the exterior world. Let's go ahead and bring our heels in slightly and drop down to just a little bit of a squat. So we're in this position. Imagine yourself on a park bench and you're just sliding on that park bench left and right. So this is a little bit of Qigong. We're transferring the weight from the left side to the right side. So I'm here on my right side, but my left side is completely free. There's no weight on that. You can kind of feel that. There's no weight. I'm transferring to my left and my right is completely free. So you can start to feel that. This is nice to do in the day when you're feeling that. We can talk about the, what were the two that now just escaped me that we talked about at the beginning? Abhyasa and Vairagya. Took me a minute. So it's that steadiness of mind, that steadiness of practice, but also letting go at the same time, surrendering. It's a funny paradox. It's really being of the world, in the world, but not of it. We're really not saying nothing's real. We're just saying nothing's real. Kind of a cosmic joke. So we can bring our arms into the mix, open out to the side, close as we come one way, open back. We can play with this spanda in our own body. Play with that expansion and then drawing back to self. Moving from left to right, forward and back. Good. Let's go ahead and bring it on back to center. Let's go ahead and just drop down into goddess pose, I think it is. Drop down into that nice squat. So this is another thing to do. If you're feeling a little bit lethargic in your day, you feel like you want to just wake up a little bit. We got these, we call them the big dumb muscles in our legs, those big ones that we can build heat in quickly. It helps us to really wake up the body. Just drop down into a squat. Let the palms of your hands come forward towards the back and then lift up on that inhale. So Lori has taught me that great lion pose. It's ha. Your tongue comes way out and you just open into that ha. So it's a ha. Bring the tongue way out. Ha. Lift, inhale, and then give it a nice good go. Helps regulate your nervous system as well, building heat in the lower half of the body. Finishing on that standing, come all the way back up again, shake it out. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and come into a deeper squat here. So whatever that is for you, sometimes I bring a bolster or something behind me or blocks. You can kind of bring your tailbone on a block. But let's come into a low squat. Take it all the way down. With our hands forward onto the mat, go ahead and lift your hips away from the floor. But feel that belly button draw in. Look to your navel. My favorite cue is bow to self. Look to your navel. And notice how that lifts your belly. Go ahead and let your hips drop. And then the belly leads the way. Bow to yourself. Look to your navel. Let that belly lift. And then lower. Just 2 more here. Helps find that action of the belly button supporting the spine. As we lift, we forget that. Coming all the way to a forward bend. Bring your heels straight and your toes straight. You can heel toe your feet wide. Coming out into a wide leg stance. Go ahead and bend into that left knee. Get a nice good stretch on the inner thigh of that right leg. And then we'll take it out the opposite way. Finishing back side to side. Bringing it back to center. Let's just hang for a moment. Let our arms hang. Let our head hang. Shake it no and yes. Release out any tension in that cervical vertebrae. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and roll up 1 vertebrae at a time. Come all the way back up to standing. Good. Walk in toe, heel back in towards center. And eventually we'll find our way back to a seated position on the mat. So coming down to that seated position, go ahead and let's start with our left foot in towards our right inner thigh. We'll come to just a few forward bends. So we'll bring a nice big inhale, lift up through the side bodies, turn towards that right thigh, and just take a nice exhale, release over. Just pausing here. With each exhale, you can feel just a little bit deeper release. It's that vulnerability that we're dropping into, that ocean that holds the wave. It's not really sufficient to just feel that vulnerability. It's really that we touch the peace and the beauty and the goodness beyond it. But we got to go through it. When you're ready, you can go ahead and slowly draw yourself back up again. We'll take it out to the opposite side. So the spiritual path is awakening to both that vulnerability and the goodness that lies just beyond that or entails it. It is part of it, actually. So inhaling, lift. Exhaling, release forward. Forward bends are a great way to quell anxiety, to bring us back to focus. It's critical for us to remember what we're forgetting. It gives us resilience. It takes us from that survival brain, that narrow focus or negativity bias. We sometimes just scan for the trouble in that state. So bringing it on back to center when you're ready. So, as always, kind of run out of a little bit of time at the end. I'd like to do a little bit of savasana before we move into our meditation. So we have about 5 to 7 minutes. Go ahead and find yourself comfortable on your mat, whatever that is to you. It may be that we brought the towel along and I haven't used it yet, but it may be that you want to bring that towel at the base of your spine and then lie back on the towel. It gives you a nice heart opening way to lie in Savasana for however long that feels okay to you. It might be that you just are more comfortable just lying flat on the mat. Every day is different, every practice is different. So we'll give ourselves time to just notice what that is for us. So with our neuropsychology, we can install the state of happiness in our implicit awareness. In neuropsychology, they say just for 15 to 30 seconds holding that positive thought, maybe that translates to 3 to 5 breaths, that in and of itself deconditions that tightness, that contraction of the heart. Gratitude is a great place to start. Maybe in your own mind, as you lie here, just considering 3 things you're grateful for. All these tools work only if we put them into practice. Having a gratitude buddy is nice too. Gladdening the mind. What we focus on grows. We're not pushing away the pain and the suffering, we're just giving a different perspective. Relaxing your shoulders, any tension in your jaw. So everything takes intention. You need to have an arrow for the energy to flow through. Move through to that inner freedom, that pure state that moves through all circumstances. Childlike innocence or purity. It stands in the face of friction. Everything is about staying. Just stay a few more minutes and feel that breath. Touch in that breath to your heart. Feel it drop down into the heart space as you inhale. Exhale that love outward. Begin to scan your life, sensing the gratitude. Maybe consider one person that you can feel that gratitude for. Feel the expansion in your heart as you consider that person. Maybe even bring to mind the story of that person, why that brings gratitude. Even sense who you are when you grow that beyond yourself. aspect of gladdening the mind is savoring. In yoga, we call it Atmasam yoga. It's remembering the good moments and playing them over and over again. Emerson said, "What would you do if you knew the stars filled the sky one night every 1,000 years? That night, nobody would sleep. We'd have ecstatic, rapturous joy in the glory of the divine. Yet, don't we skim over the magic in our lives? Pleasure is accessible everywhere. It's our true nature. Every leaf teaches the Dharma path." Savoring the beauty and the joy. When you're ready, you can begin to bring life back to your fingers and your toes, your digits, your arms and your legs. So remembering this transition, this pulsation, again, coming from that silence, quiet. What does it feel like to move from this back to the exterior world? What do we want to bring along with us? So eventually, in your own time, bring yourself to seated position on the mat. When you're settled, you can bring your palms together in front of your heart. Consider that notion of gladdening the mind. Holding that for 3 to 5 seconds or 3 to 5 breaths. And when you're ready, chin falls down to the chest and namaste. The light in me honors the light in each one of you. Thank you. Thank you. So that was the movement portion of our practice. Well, you may move into opening it up and then we'll do a little meditation, but I do want to hear from each of you today. It's important as we gather together to share hearts and to find that support with each other. So this kind of falls along the same lines of what we were just practicing and moving with. This is anonymous, although it's been heard from many different people, Buddha, many different teachers. The thought becomes the word. The word manifests as the deed. The deed develops into the habit. The habit hardens into character. Character gives birth to the destiny. So watch your thoughts with care and let them spring from love, born out of all respect for all beings. And there's that. So I'd like to go ahead and open it up. I don't know if